Hello and welcome to the fourth season of What's in a Story. And a big thanks to all the listeners, as it's all because of you that this podcast enters into its second year. I am Lopamudra Moitro, and in my podcast, I read the stories from my books as an anthropologist, writer, and translator working with popular culture and heritage of India and South Asia. And I introduce each story with some additional information from different fields of history, archaeology, geology, and others, which helps to bring a context to the story. I would like to add here that understanding this context is supremely important, as most of these stories from folklore took shape across several centuries and over a vast period of time. Many features were added to the narratives in this time period. Thus, before taking these stories as historical proof, one should be careful enough to understand the historical context as well as socio-cultural, religious, political context of the stories mentioned within each story. Across the last year, at most unusual places, it was nice to have met people coming up to me and speaking about the many stories that I have narrated across the last 1 year, and how they really like the stories as well as the books, my books from which I read them. The experience has not only been enriching but also greatly rewarding. I never thought it would be reaching out to so many people around the world what began as a small individual effort in last year May in 2025. Presently, and thanks to all the listeners, this podcast reaches across 11 countries of the world, and according to the present available listeners data, this includes a part from India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Germany, UK, Russia, Austria, Brazil, Singapore, Poland, and the USA. This in itself is a huge achievement, and I sincerely thank each and every listener from the core of my heart. Now, a little bit about the fourth season. In this season, I would like to share some very interesting narratives that I came across about teachers. And by that, I would like to travel outside the domains of school walls and explore a larger area where a person, of course, who teaches in an educational institution is, of course, a teacher, but also one who motivates, encourages, helps to organize your random thoughts, mentors you in difficult times, or simply inspires you to move ahead in spite of all adversities. A teacher thus transgresses any narrow definition and encompasses all of these and perhaps a lot more. While collecting these stories, each experience has been deeply heartening, and as we begin the second year of this podcast, this is a dedication to the many unsung heroes of our lives, the teachers. About the story. The title of today's story is The Story of a Teacher, and I read this from my book, The Owl Delivered the Good News All Night Long, Folktales, Legends and Modern Lore of India by Aleph Book Company. The story is in Hindi, and it has been written by Samvedna Rawat Amitabh. As we begin this episode, a quick warning. This episode contains discussions of traumatic events, molestation, and sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised. The author is one of the younger daughters of the teacher mentioned in the story. Years later, after the actual incident took place, the story was narrated by the eldest daughter to her siblings. She was the one who had witnessed all the incidents narrated within the story during her growing up years. She also decided to become a teacher later on. The teacher in the story was an eminent Hindi poet and writer, and also a very honest human being, a loving father, caring husband, dedicated teacher, and a great visionary. His name is not disclosed in the story as per the kind request of the author made to me. The name of the young student has also been changed following a request made by the author. When I heard this story from the author, Samvedna, for the first time, it was a very overwhelming experience for me, and I kept thinking, perhaps there is more to take away from this story than just listening it as a story centered around a dedicated teacher. The story speaks about building an empathetic attitude towards others, trying to understand the silent struggles that people often go through unnoticed. Everyone might not be vocal about that, but they are nevertheless warriors in the battles that they are fighting. The story also shows a remarkable positive outlook and a sense of trust which the teacher built up towards the student around whom the story centers. Positive thinking and trust goes a long way into transforming lives. And if it was not for the teacher, this story would not have taken place, and perhaps it would have been lost like the many others around us who seek that simple positive touch, empathy, and a simple sense of trust. Hope the story reaches out to everyone to highlight the very important impact of positive thoughts and a belief in oneself, to know that never to give up and always there is light at the end of the tunnel. Follows the story of a teacher. From my book, The Owl Delivered the Good News All Night Long, Folktales, Legends and Modern Lore of India. The story of a teacher. I will take her responsibility. A sonorous voice echoed in the corridor of the college. This man was barely 40 years old. It was not a joke to take the responsibility of a 23-year-old female student from the college, especially when no one from the family of this girl was ready to shoulder any responsibility. Swarna belonged to the Himalayas in the north. She was lean, thin, and very pretty. Her skin dazzled like the full moon. She had big black eyes and thick long black hair, and anybody could be enamored by her beauty. However, she was a very difficult student in college, and nobody could stop her from jumping off the tall, thick walls of the hostel fence. Swarna had many boyfriends from one of the reputed engineering colleges of the state in the same city. She was very friendly with them, and without the permission of her hostel warden, would spend nights out of her hostel mingling with these friends. Despite several warnings, she remained undeterred. Warden, teachers, and friends had given up on her. Finally, her expulsion was definite one day, and her parents were summoned from her native town. But that sonorous voice of the teacher was heard again, and this time he roared, "If students who are a little bit off the track are expelled from schools and colleges, then they will be thrown and pushed back further to the same world that had spoiled them in the first place. Once again, they will be floundering about in the muddy waters of a hypocritical society." And he continued, "It is our duty actually to help them to be on the right track once again and not abandon them like this." The principal, the colleagues of the teacher, and even the guardians of Swarna refused to allow her to continue her studies in the college. They argued that her consideration might encourage other girls to flout the rules as well. It wasn't just this girl, but that year, unfortunately, the entire batch of students had many rebellious young girls and boys. It was a trying situation for the principal and the teachers and everybody who was disturbed by the severe situation. However, this teacher was different. His teaching methods were different from the rest, and he was fast gaining popularity over the past few years for his depth of knowledge, dedication, and compassion towards his students. This teacher took up the responsibility of the troublesome girl and also asked the principal to make him the in charge of that particular batch. The teacher started his duties as he was given the job soon. This job was not only limited to classroom teachings alone, but continued even after class hours. Discussions and conversations continued with the students, and they in turn started to reciprocate with conversations from the heart. His compassion, dedication, and vision worked, and gradually everyone noticed a marked difference amongst the students of the batch. They were seen busy writing, narrating, or could be even heard engaging in meaningful discussions. For the college authorities, this was a pleasant surprise, and they really liked the change. Little did the college or even the teacher realize that the change will go a long, long way and transform several of the students forever. This rebellious batch produced some of the most promising, talented, and sensitive writers, artists, teachers, government administrative officers, and people employed in the border security force. There was a considerable change in Swarna's behavior as well. Composed and poised, She was now ready to listen and work on what she was told. But the teacher constantly felt that something was missing. Though Swarna was quite understanding in comparison to previous years, yet the teacher could perceive an emptiness in her eyes and felt that Swarna could never open up completely. It was as if Swarna was holding something back. The teacher found this unnerving, considering Swarna's very young age. He was determined to find a solution, and one day he confided in his wife for advice and a possible solution, and they reached a conclusion that they should be speaking to the parents of the child, and she seemed to have experienced a disturbed past. The parents were summoned, but they turned up after several months. The teacher got to know that Swarna had lost both her parents when she was very young, and she was raised in a joint family, a family with too many uncles, the siblings of her father. One of her uncles and his wife showed up, but the teacher found that they seemed elusive of their responsibilities. Months later, the tragedy unfolded as Swarna herself confided in the teacher and his wife. During one of her conversations, Swarna mentioned that she was repeatedly sexually abused and raped by her uncles in the joint family. Consequently, she became pregnant, and when she was around 14 or 15 years old, she gave birth to a child. The baby was left in an orphanage, and after her school, Swarna was sent to the hostel for further studies. That year and the following year, Swarna topped her class in graduation. She finished her graduation, completed a BA degree, and found a teacher's job. The teacher continued his work with further motivation. He was also a poet and a writer, a sensitive human being, and a loving father to his 5 children. He had gradually lost touch with Swarna, but many years later, he received a letter from Europe. It was from Swarna. He read it aloud in front of his family. Swarna wrote that she was happy and married to a wonderful man and settled in Europe.